Hello, Internet. Today I thought I would go over a problem involving solving an equation that has not one, but two radicals in it. This particular problem comes from the OpenStax Intermediate Algebra, Section 8.6, Exercise 341. And if you don't know about OpenStax already, you really should take a look at them. They're pretty sweet organization. They're basically making free textbooks available. So link in the description. Fantastic textbooks. Take a look at them if you haven't already. Getting back to this particular problem, the first thing that one would generally do in a problem like this is try and isolate the radicals on one side or the other. In this case, that's going to be basically impossible, as we'll see shortly. But at the very least, we want to isolate one of the radicals because that will make our lives a lot easier as we solve this. So that's what I'm going to do immediately. I'm going to, I think I'm going to go after this one and get this one alone by adding this whole thing to the other side. So what I will end up with, and I am going to have to write fairly small because this is going to be a very long problem. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to add square root of x minus 5 to both sides. So we'll have plus square root of x minus 5. So what that will give us is that will give us square root of x plus 7 equals 2 plus square root of x minus 5. Okay, so at least we have one of these radicals isolated. It's impossible to isolate this other radical here because if we were to subtract 2, it would end up over here. If we were to move it over back, it'd end up back in the same place. So we're going to have to deal with this 2 somehow, and I will show you how to do that as things progress. But basically, the basic approach here to getting this algebraic expression out from underneath this radical, in other words, getting rid of one of the radicals, is to square both sides. And unfortunately, what we have to do to this side to get this radical off, we also have to do to the entire other side. And as you'll see, that's going to make a gigantic mess over here, but that's okay because we can just kind of deal with that. So we're going to have to square that side, and again, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So what we'll end up with here is, again, because of the principle of if we have the square root of stuff, and we take that thing and we square it, we're going to be just left with the stuff. So let me go back to here. This just becomes the x plus 7. And this is going to be our mass. So I've seen a lot of students kind of somehow think that the 2 kind of just applies to this and to this. It doesn't work that way. What you actually have here is FOIL. So you have to write this out twice and multiply each one of the terms together. So it's going to be a long thing here. So we're going to have 2 plus square root of x minus 5 times 2 plus square root of x minus 5. Yeah, it's going to be a long thing. So then let me use a slightly different color here. I will use green for now. Now we're going to FOIL. So we're going to have first times first. 2 times 2 is, let me get the rest of the problem copied down here. X plus 7. Go back to the green. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times this is just plus 2 root that thing, x minus 5. And then if we do it again, we're going to have 2 times this root thingy. So we're going to have plus another 2 square root of x minus 5. And then we do the last one. let's see, first, and then I went this one, which I didn't show, but you get the idea. And then we will have this thing times itself. Now that actually does simplify. We will get, let's see, it's a positive times a positive, so we're going to get positive square root of x minus 5, and we have it times itself, so we can write it as square root of x minus 5 squared. And then we can actually kind of use this square root of stuff squared as just a stuff. We can actually use that on this particular case. It doesn't get rid of any of this, which we'll have to deal with at a later step, but it does get rid of this, so this just ends up being x minus 5. So let me rewrite this whole thing. Let me go back to blue. I will go x plus 7 equals 4 plus, and then we can combine like terms here because we've got 2 this thingy plus 2 of this thingy, so we've got actually 4 of that thing. And then what we're going to have here is we're going to have plus x minus 5, because again, the square root of something squared is just a something, so only the something comes out. Okay, so can we do a little bit of simplification and clean up here? I think we can. I think we can go 4 minus 5. Those are both on the same side, so I think we can combine those. 4 minus 5 is negative 1, so we're going to have x plus 7 equals 4 square root of x minus 5 plus x, and then instead of these two, we're going to have minus 1 here, because 4 minus 5 is just negative 1. And I'm out of room, so I'm going to have to copy this to the next page. Bear with me for a second here. Copy, paste. Okay, so now we're here. And what shall we do now? So I think our goal at this point is to continue trying to isolate for this other radical. Basically, we've gotten, by squaring both sides, we've gotten rid of one radical, but we still have this other radical to deal with. And the way we have to deal with that is we have to isolate that piece as best we can. So I think we'll just move everything else that's non-essential over to this other side. So this plus x and this minus 1 will all be moved to the other side. I'll do it one step at a time so you can see it, of course. So I'm going to go plus 1 here first. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. That's going to move this negative 1 over to the side and put it with this 7. So we're going to have x plus 8, 7 plus 1 is 8, equals 4 square root of x minus 5. And then we still have this x here, so plus x. All right, so now we've still got this term with the radical, and then we're still adding another term to it. So we still do have to move this over. So we're going to minus x from both sides. So looks like x minus x is 0x. I do believe that drops out. I think that's going to be okay, though. We will have 8 equals 4 square root of x minus 5. And then from then on, let's see, can we isolate this further? I do believe we can, because this 4 is being multiplied by this square root of x minus 5 thing that we're trying to isolate. And I'm noticing that 4 and 8 here, this term is actually divisible. Basically what I'm trying to say here is this entire side of this equal sign is actually divisible by 4. It will go evenly. So what we can actually do here is undo the multiplication between this 4 and this radical piece by just dividing both sides by 4. And 8 divided by 4, I think that's 2. Pretty sure. Okay, so we're going to have 2 equals square root of x minus 5. Okay, and then at this point, we're basically at the point where if this were a simpler problem, this would be the rest of the problem. So now we've done the first half of the problem. Now we just have to do the second half. So at this point, the radical term is already nice and isolated for us, so we can simply just square both sides again. That's pretty simplistic. So 2 squared is 4, and the square root of something squared is just a something. So we're going to have x minus 5. So let's see, 4 equals x minus 5. I'm going to move this all up here if I can. So 4 equals x minus 5. And how do we solve for x? Well, we got to plus 5 here. Plus 5, and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 equals x. All right, so we have an answer for x. We have solved for x. Now, we have used this principle of squaring both sides to get the stuff that's underneath the radical. We've used that twice now. And as I've said on previous videos, whenever you take both sides of an equation and raise them to an even power, in other words, square them, but this also applies to any even power, it has a tendency to rip off negative signs. So that can be a big problem, because what it can end up doing is giving you answers that don't make sense in the context of the original problem. So we always have to check our answer to see if it makes sense in the original problem in the context of these kinds of exercises where we have to square both sides in order to solve it. So let me go back to the original here, and I'm just going to copy the original problem here, and oops, I want to paste it here just so we can go make sure that this actually does work. So the question I have for you is square root of 9 plus 7 minus square root of 9 minus 5. Does that equal 2? And our calculator here can help us figure that out. So square root of 9 plus 7 minus square root of 9 minus 5. That does in fact come out to 2. Okay, so we get a true statement here. 2, oh, I wrote 2 again. That's not what I meant to write. I meant to write a question mark. Anyway, 2 does in fact equal 2. We do get a true statement. Therefore, our answer of x equals 9 is in fact the correct answer. All right, I think that is all for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Also, consider hiring me as your tutor. I'd be happy to help you with stuff like this. For more on that, check out my website at www.tutoringbyroger.com. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.